Hi class, in this video we're going to go over chapter 9 on monopoly. So this is the second part of our 4 chapter series on different type of market structure. So monopoly, you guys all played the game before, right? So think about when you were a kid, try to dealing and buying properties from the board, and then try to make all your competitors bankrupt, and probably share some tears too, right? So the idea of monopoly is that if you're the only company in town, you control the entire market. You can set whatever price you want to maximize your profit, right? So that's why monopoly is so um, I don't know, idealized or desirable for the companies to have, because if you're a monopoly, you can get the most profit in the market. All right, so let's see how this monopoly structure is working. Um, all right, so the example we use in the book is for the cotton industry. But we don't buy cottons, right? I mean, we don't buy cotton directly. You buy clothes that are made from cotton, but consumers don't go to Walmart, HEB, buying like a 20 pounds of cotton, right? So let's use something more realistic, something that you actually care about. Um, think about which company provide your internet service. Now, if you're fortunate, if you're living in a big urban area, you're gonna have different company competing for a business, right? So company like AT&T, Xfinity, they tend to operate in the same area. But if you living in a rural area or far out in a suburb, then your choices might be very limited. So for many people who are living just outside of Houston, their internet provider is a company called Southern Link. And then Southern Link is actually very bad in quality. Well, I'm being recorded here, so hopefully they won't come sue me. But the speed is very slow compared to Xfinity and AT&T, and the price is pretty expensive. So because of this high cost and low services, many local municipalities actually set up their own internet providing service because the Southern Link is providing such a below par service. That is because Southern Link is a monopoly structure, that it faces no competition from any other company. So monopoly, by definition, is whenever you have only one company producing for the entire market. That's called a monopoly. And then for a monopoly to stay as a monopoly, there must be some type of barrier to entry. That means other company cannot join in to compete. That this prevent other company from coming and compete. So there are different type of barrier to entry. They might be legal, technological, or market forces such as the size of the market that prevent other company from joining and compete. There's also something called a natural monopoly. So natural monopoly is whenever um, there are other phenomena besides legal barriers that preventing other company from joining compete. And then one of the most very well-known natural monopoly is that sometimes it's just more beneficial for one company to serve entire market. Remember last chapter we talked about the decreasing cost industry. So in the decreasing cost industry, that's a natural monopoly. Because as a company getting bigger and bigger and bigger, then this company will face a lower cost than any newcomers. So that will put new companies at a disadvantage, and therefore this existing company can service the entire market at a lower cost than any new company coming in, and that will be called a natural monopoly. So not legal binding monopoly, but it's just that the market is set up where the one company is more efficient to serve the entire market. That's called a natural monopoly. Or you might have a situation where the one company owns the key resource. So imagine that if you have a company, let's say the company owns, let's say if you're Osaka, then you're owning this only well of spring water in town, then you are a natural monopoly. Or an oil company owns the well in town, you're the natural monopoly. And then legal monopoly is the opposite, is where the monopoly is set up because of legal barrier that preventing other company from joining and compete. All right, so we mentioned this previously. So natural monopoly is whenever you have industry that you might have a decrease in marginal cost. So it's cheaper for a company to provide the entire market. Or you might have a smaller market that might be difficult to transport. So for example, that let's suppose you're in the far out in West Texas, and you're the only grocery store in town. Well, nobody want to compete against you because the cost of transportation is just so high to compete against you. And lastly, anytime you own a key resource, that's also natural monopoly. Okay. All right. So if you look at this natural monopoly, especially with a um, decreasing average cost. That remember we saw this in the previous two chapter. So for this long run average cost curve, we have different sections. So this first section here, when the long run average cost is going down, that's called an economy of scale. And then when it's flat, it's constant return to scale. And lastly, when it's going up, it's called a diseconomy of scale. So if you have a market structure where the market is currently at this portion, that's the economy of scale. So as this one company is expanding its operation more and more and more, it's facing with a lower average cost. So for a big company, they're going to see a lower cost than any newcomer who are smaller compared to the existing company. So if you're a big company, let's say you're serving 8,000 units, and if you're a new company, you're serving only 5,000 units, then at 5,000 units, you actually have a higher cost, higher average cost. So they will put you at a disadvantage compared to the existing company. So this is a form of natural monopoly. Think about a situation, let's say Centerpoint. So Centerpoint is a monopoly that serves the entire Houston area for natural gas. So if you want natural gas, then Centerpoint is the only company for you to get from. Now, what if you want to set up a new company to compete against Centerpoint? So think about, what do you need? Well, you need a set of new pipe that's connecting each individual house, and that can be getting very, very expensive. And that's why it's more efficient for one company to serve the entire market. Now, government can also create barriers. So government can also set up some legal monopolies. So think about utilities. So 20 years ago, actually no, almost 30 years ago, before deregulation in the Texas area, the state government actually set up legal monopolies, so allow each company to monopolize each local area for electrical services. So back then, if you want to get electricity, you can only get from Reliant. But now they have more deregulation, allow more competitions, so you can get electricity from many electricity resellers. And also U.S. Postal Service, that's also a monopoly too, right? So because in many areas, Postal Service is the only service for only mail service for the entire area. All right, and also other legal barriers. Think about patents. So patent give the inventor exclusive right to use the invention. Trademark, that you can trademark a symbol, you can trademark a phrase, you can trademark a name. So if I say, hey, I'm Professor X, I'm going to trademark it, then nobody else can use that anymore. Copyright, if you have any legal work, legal production, you can use copyright. So if I write a book, then I can use copyright on that book. So nobody can copy from my book. Trade secret, so this will be some type of a manufacturer, advantage, secret you might have. So maybe a secret formula, a secret method that nobody else has. That's a trade secret. That's also can be protected by the companies. All right, and also know also intellectual property. So this will be the law that's including patent, trademark, copyright, and trade secret that protect the right of inventors to produce and sell the inventions. Now, the reason why we have this intellectual property law is really try to encourage more inventions. Because imagine if we don't have it, then nobody will even bother to invent stuff anymore. Because why do you even put in the actual cost, actual time and effort to have a very nice invention, and then right away it will be stolen by somebody else? Then nobody wants to invent anymore. Let's just all steal from everybody else's recipe, right? So this intellectual property really incentivize our inventors to invent more stuff, and then they can profit from the inventions. And also know what's deregulation. So deregulation is one, to mention this. So this is one government to control away from pricing or quantity allow the market to be more competitive. That's called deregulation. So in the early 2000s, late 1990s, there was a huge wave of deregulation in the electricity market. So for anybody who is from California, then you know this very clearly that in the early 2000s, there were those huge blackout, and partially because of the deregulation in the electricity market. Okay, all right. So if you compare different barrier to entry, so this would be a very nice summary of different type of barrier to entry. So take a look at it. This might be a little helpful. Try to explain to you the difference between each method. Okay. All right. So also known as predatory pricing. So this, by the way, this is illegal in America because we do have something called an antitrust law. So monopoly is good for the company, but monopoly is bad for the economy, for the industry, because monopoly actually discouraged competition. Because when you have a monopoly company will do the best they can, try to maintain as a monopoly. But we want competitions, because with competition, our consumer benefit, our society benefit. So we have something called an antitrust law. So anytime if a company become too big, we can use antitrust law, try to break it up into smaller parts. The last time we really used it was back in 1970s when our government break up AT&T. So it got broken up into two different companies. It was AT&T and another company called Southwestern Bell. So AT&T was in charge of the long distance service. That's why you call, people in other cities or other states on a landline. That's the long distance service. And then the other company, Southwestern Bell, was in charge of, over the local services. So because AT&T, the company, was getting too big, it was becoming a monopoly in the U.S. economy. So we used the antitrust law to break the company up into two different parts. All right, so predatory pricing is when companies actually try to cut the prices a lot, so it will drive other company out of business. So imagine company might be selling the good below cost, just so it can drive other company out of business, and that's called a predatory pricing, right? So imagine if I own a chicken fried rice business, and there are also other restaurant in town also making chicken fried rice, and let's suppose my cost is $5 per order, but I'm gonna sell my chicken fried rice for only $1 per order. And the whole goal for that is try to drive other company out of business. That is called a predatory pricing, okay? And that is illegal by our US antitrust law. Now, monopoly want to charge whatever price it want, but it will only want to charge a price where the profit is maximized. So how much it can charge is really constrained by the demand for the product, right? So how much the demand is. When the demand is high, that will allow company to charge higher prices. When the demand is low, then company can only charge lower prices. But one thing special about the monopoly, and compared to that one from last chapter, the perfect competition, that for the perfect competition, the individual companies don't have control over prices. But in monopoly, because we're the only company in town, then we can set what the price is. And because we're the only company in town, that any changes in the price we set can also change the overall demand in the market. Because company charge a higher price, we're going to see lower demand. We charge a lower price, we're going to see higher demand. So for our monopoly company, there's really two impact. There's two factors that's impacting the company's bottom line. One is the price they will charge. The other one is the change in quantity, because they will change in the opposite direction, right? So if you charge a higher prices, so in this example in panel B, if company charge a higher prices at PH, higher price, we're going to see a low quantity. At lower prices, PL, we're going to see a high quantity, right? So between price and quantity, they're working against each other, right? So what is the right price that company should charge? So for this, if you guys remember what you learned in the previous chapter, chapter 3, chapter 4, the income effect, the substitution effect, that's what this really applies to between the price and quantities. Now, if you're a company, you can use what we learned in elasticity, try to maximize your revenue by charging different prices. But remember, the goal for a company is not to maximize revenue. The goal for a company is to maximize profit, right? So at what price level, at what quantity level can our profit be maximized? So just by charging higher prices or just by charging lower prices is not the answer, because not only are you changing the quantity, the company might also be facing with different cost structure, right? So just like we learned from the previous chapter, that we are really trying to set up where the market or the company where the marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue. I hope you guys remember this, right? So yeah, I hope you guys really dream about me from the previous chapter. So remember, for any company who try to maximize profit, we're gonna set up where the marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue. That's when the profit is maximized. Okay. All right. So highest profit for the company will happen whenever the marginal revenue is highest compared to marginal, where the total revenue is highest compared to total cost. So if you look at this diagram here, notice that this total revenue curve is going up first and then it's going down. Now that's because remember we have the price times quantity, and they're working against each other. So one is going up, the other one is going down. So if company charge a higher prices, that at the beginning your revenue will increase, but after a certain point, if you keep charging higher prices, then the quantity will go down by a lot. Then combined, you're gonna see a lower total revenue. So total revenue is increasing and then it's decreasing. And that also means your marginal revenue curve is always going down, right? So again, we're going to compare to see what is our marginal revenue, what is our marginal cost, and that intersection will determine where the maximum profit is. So we're looking for where the MC equals to MR. Okay, so marginal profit is the profit of one more unit of output. Again, this equals to marginal revenue minus marginal cost. You want to set up where the marginal profit is equal to 0. And the reason why that happens because if your marginal revenue is more than marginal cost, then companies should produce more of it. But as the more and more production you have, this marginal cost is increasing and this marginal revenue is decreasing, right? So as the more and more you produce, when they're moving in the opposite direction, eventually your marginal profit will equal to 0. And that is when you stop producing more good. Because after that point, you can have marginal revenue less than marginal cost, then company actually lose money or have less profit by producing more good. So on this diagram here, the first point we're looking for is where the marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue. At this point, we know that at a quantity of 5, the company profit is maximized or the company loss is minimized, right? So where the marginal cost equal to marginal revenue, that's the most important intersection on the diagram. All right, so you're gonna see something like this on your quiz and also on your test. So when you see a diagram like this, the first thing looking for is where the marginal cost equal to marginal revenue. So this is the marginal revenue curve. Marginal cost is right here. So that intersection is right at this point. So that's the first thing you do, find out where the marginal cost equals to marginal revenue. Second step, you want to go down, get a quantity. So go down, get a quantity. So quantity is at 5. And then next, from the 5, go up to your demand curve. This is demand curve. So go to demand curve. At this point, that is the price for the market. So, okay, it's not really labeled here, so I'm just gonna guess. Looks like the price is 800. So price of 800. And the last step, from the same quantity, go to your average total cost curve here. So that'll be, let me use different color. That'll be right here. And that looks like it's gonna be at about maybe 300, right? So we have the price is 800. The average total cost is 300, and then your quantity is going to be 5, and that is the total profit for this monopoly company. So if you're a monopoly company, and this is very important, guys, if you're a monopoly company, in the long run, you can have profit. So this will be both a short run and a long run situation. Now for company in perfect competition, they cannot have long run profit, because if one company making profit, other company will join and compete. When they join and compete, price goes down, profit goes away. But because the monopoly company have the barrier to entry, no other company can join and compete. So they can stay as a monopoly and then still enjoy the profit. So a monopoly company can have long run profit, but for our company in perfect competitions, they can't. Okay. All right, so we talk about this. So that's the step on how you find out your profit. All right, so let's look at this one here together. So first thing we do, find out where the marginal cost equal to marginal revenue. So that's right here. That's marginal cost equal to marginal revenue. Second step, go down, find the quantity. That is your quantity. Third step, go up to your demand curve. Find out where the price is. So price is right here. And last step, go to your average total cost curve from the same quantities from Q1. Go to ATC. That is the average total cost, right? So this P2 is the average total cost. Then this shaded area, that's the profit for the company. Okay, so profit is possible in the long run and short run. All right, so one more thing for the marginal revenue. So one thing you should know that if you from the previous diagram, you probably noticed that the demand curve is always above marginal revenue curve. And then if you remember from the previous chapter that in the perfect competition, ooh, that looks very bad. So in perfect competition, when you draw the diagram, your marginal revenue curve is actually overlapping with our demand and price line, right? So they're the same under perfect competition, but under monopoly company, the demand is always above marginal revenue curve, and that is always true. Okay, so this flat price line and demand curve is only true for perfect competition. For everybody else, for all the other market, you're gonna see the demand curve is always above our marginal revenue curve. Okay, and then also for those of you guys who are taking upper level econ class, then you might also use like calculus to calculate our marginal revenue curve, because the marginal revenue curve is just the first derivative of our total revenue curve. All right, so also last definition knows the allocated efficiency. So this is whenever the production of the output is optimized to meet the demand in the market, and also where the marginal benefit to society is more than the marginal cost. Okay. All right. So that's it for this chapter. Any question, let me know, and I will see you guys for next chapter. All right. Bye bye.